Day. He's a farmer from Deloraine, Manitoba, and for 23 plus years was also an ag rep and research farm manager for Manitoba Agriculture, where I had the pleasure of being Scott's colleague. In 2011, he left the Manitoba government to help start the agricultural investment and ag tech firm called Treelane Capital, which is based out of San Francisco. Treelane invests in farmland across the USA and then manages those farms in partnership with local farmers with a focus on soil and water conservation. Treelane is also investing globally in new early-stage ag food technologies, and Scott is currently a director and the chief agronomist for Treelane Capital, but continues to farm along with the help of his family at Deloraine. The family farm is called Treelane Farms Limited and is a typical prairie farm growing cereals, pulses, and oilseeds. Please join me in welcoming Scott to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Looking here, I'm thinking it's a real privilege that I actually know most of the people in the audience. So I think that's really cool, and I consider it a privilege. And I was thinking it was 1991 that I ran the slide projector in the presentation area of Ag Days. And I was dreaming someday I might get to speak at Ag Days. So here we are, a testament to that your dreams do come true, but also an example of maybe you should dream a little higher at times too. But this title of "The Sky is Falling and the Cows Are Coming Home," that was a nonsensical title that I sent to the committee just to see if they were paying attention. And they obviously weren't, because I went back in to change the title and it had already been published. And then I was forced to find something that fit under that title. And you'll see that it's going to be kind of challenging at times. So I always want to, and it was mentioned in the introduction, but certainly I want to recognize my family and friends, even my neighbors as well, and my colleagues, because I get to live this really crazy life where I travel all over the place, and there's a lot of people that allow me to do that. And I wanted to make sure that recognition of my family, my dad stays home and worries while I travel the world. I wanted to make sure that they got recognized, because it is a big part of how I'm able to do these things. So I live in San Francisco in the wintertime where our head office is, and I live in Deloraine in the summer where our farm is. I farm with my family, but I work for the company full-time as well, and I travel a lot of places. So it's a lot of people involved in allowing this to happen for me. So our company started as a farmland investment firm, a venture firm, where we bought farms in the United States, fixed them up, rented them to local farmers, and then eventually sold them. And this was a big part of what I was doing when the company started. We ended up getting into ag tech and food tech opportunities, and that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about. I could talk for an hour about farmland investment and those issues, but that's not what this presentation is about. So the sky is falling. First of all, we have this geopolitical unrest situation that Jacob did a great job of talking about before lunch. And I have a little side story there. I met Jacob Shapiro, the speaker here before lunch, a few years ago, and we were at an event together. And I spoke, and then he spoke, and then we're at this reception, and there was this Chinese woman that was really being friendly to me. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And Jacob comes over to me and he says, "You know, Scott, she's a Chinese operative." I was like, oh, I just thought she thought I was a cool guy. And I'm kind of vulnerable to that stuff. But it turns out that she was a spy, at least from his intelligence. And thought, well, I'm in a different world right now. I have to be careful working in tech and being in these events. So that's how I met Jacob Shapiro, and that's kind of how we ended up at the show here before lunch. So you have this uncertainty of what's going on in markets and in all sorts of aspects of what's going to happen in the future. You have the sky is falling with commodity prices right now, and you have this attention on soybeans and what China's doing, but in the United States, everything's in the tank. We have a farmer in California, tomato grower, has no contracts to grow tomatoes next year. The market's collapsed on tomatoes. We have a farmer in Arkansas who cannot sell his rice for the first time in history. He can't even get anyone to bid on his rice. We have farmers that grew cotton and cannot sell their cotton. We were offered a farm in Washington State this past spring. 1,000 acres of apples were offered to us for free. If the farmer operated it, he was going to lose money, so he was giving us the farm for free to find someone to operate it, because the apple industry is in so much trouble. We bought a vineyard a few weeks ago, a small one, and we're taking out the vines and putting it back into potato and corn production. The vineyards are making no money at all as well. So you have not just the common commodities that are in trouble, you have virtually everything is in an oversupply or a victim of the various tariffs and so on. And then the last thing I'll mention about the sky is falling. I took this picture a few years ago at harvest, walking towards the combine. That was the night that all the GPS systems shut down. And we have a company that's working on trying to overcome these situations when you have a massive aurora borealis event and your GPS system shut down. So that was the other thing about the sky is falling. And then the cows are coming home. That's hopefully going to be a more positive thing about some of this new technology that's allowing us to do things that will push efficiencies and animal welfare and all these other aspects that we want to achieve. We have technologies that we're looking at now that are really going to be exciting. So this is the slide that gives me the street cred of being a tech wizard. So when I was on the Ag Days Committee, I don't know when Wikipedia was created, but I put a Wikipedia entry for Ag Days in 22 years ago on the Brandon website. That's the most badass tech thing I've ever done. And I went there Sunday night and it's still there. And it's the only thing about Ag Days on Wikipedia. So it's time that Ag Days had their own Wikipedia site, but it gives me the street cred that I'm a tech wizard, right? It also shows you that Wikipedia is a little too public, that you just go in there and put anything on. But that's the Ag Days input from 22 years ago on Wikipedia. So this is my busiest slide. And I'm going to go through a whole bunch of numbers. Stay with me. The rest of the slide isn't, or the presentation is going to be with this. So Meta, Facebook, the $1 represents the value of $1 if I'd invested when I went to Silicon Valley 14 years ago. And the $40 is what that's worth today. And then the 1.6 trillion is the market cap of that company today. Tesla, if I'd invested in $1, it'd be $215 now. I used to go to the Tesla place. It was on the way to the office. It was an old Chevy dealership. I went on the floor, saw where they were putting the batteries in the old Lotus cars. It was just another electric car place 14 years ago. And it's at 1.5 trillion. I'll get to this one later. Alphabet, Google, 1 to 23, a $4 trillion company now that tripped over the 4 trillion mark 2 weeks ago. Then you have the mothership, NVIDIA. If I put $1 in, it's 529, 4.5 trillion. And then Apple, $1, $29, 3.9 trillion, almost $4 trillion. Bitcoin, I learned about Bitcoin the first few weeks I was in Silicon Valley. Myself and my friend that started the company, the guy explained it to us, we both said, that's the stupidest idea we've ever heard. And if we hadn't bought a pair of pants and put that money in Bitcoin, we both would have been worth $1 million. So, reference to what this all is the Canadian annual GDP is 2.5 trillion. You have a bunch of companies here that are up to twice the value of the entire Canadian economy for a year. Now, market caps are the reflection of the value of that company today. It doesn't necessarily mean a lot of things. But it is immense amount of concentration of wealth in the last few years. Apple was the first $1 trillion company in 2018. Now you have 10 of them. 5 of the 10 most valuable companies in the world are within 20 kilometers of each other near where we live. You can ride a bike from the 5 biggest companies in the afternoon. And it's all concentrated, and I'm not talking about like YouTube and Oracle and Intel that are all massive companies within this little ecosystem between San Francisco and San Jose. So what this means to agriculture is a couple of things. First of all, you have this incredible concentration of wealth and attention. So what's happened to us in ag tech investing is there's no money to take things to commercial success. It's all going to artificial intelligence. It's all going to this sort of new economy
that supposedly has this tremendous promise because of the high valuations. It also means it can mean more in relation to energy needs as this is being fed, and it's a dramatic change from even 5 years ago, this amount of attention is happening. The one thing I put in about Toyota is the world's largest car manufacturer. They have the #1 model, #2 model, and then Tesla's is the #3 model worldwide. They have a market valuation of $290 billion. So you have this tremendous difference in the valuation between Tesla and Toyota that doesn't make a lot of sense right now. Toyota makes robots, they make electric cars, they're a much larger manufacturing company, but people are putting all this faith in Tesla doing really big things in the future. And what this means to agriculture as well is you have this valuations, these wealth creations that exist in the ether. They don't exist in anything tangible. So now you have companies looking to agriculture land as a base for their investment, even if it doesn't make them any money. Because you have $1 trillion in a company above Toyota value that just exists in some promise in the future. So what are you going to go to have a base on your investment portfolio that's as secure as anything? And you look at agriculture land as being the ideal base. You know, when you look at real estate for business and that sort of thing, that's pretty precarious. Whereas ag is becoming more and more a base for these huge valuations in funds and individuals. Sorry, that was it. So I took this picture a few months ago. That's the mothership. That's NVIDIA's headquarters. It's a 36-acre field. If you want to talk about value added, that is the most productive piece of farmland in the world. And NVIDIA is $4.5 trillion market cap right now, and NVIDIA makes the chips that make AI work. That all started from your Sony PlayStation, your Xbox, being able to process visual images in games really, really fast. That's the beginning of artificial intelligence. And the whole nature of it is to process data really fast. That's what's driving this. And NVIDIA makes the best chips to allow you to process data very quickly. So this is like 5 miles from Google. Google's about 4 miles from Facebook. Tesla's in between Apple and Google. And you can literally ride a bike between these companies. So they always have this ecosystem of incredible talent in this one area. Now, Jacob talked about America having the distinct advantage of research and innovation, but they don't make anything anymore. And one thing, as a foreigner in Silicon Valley, the vast majority of people in these facilities and these scientists come from other countries. This is this melting pot. This is just, it's got great weather, Stanford University, these bases that make it such an ideal place for technology, but much of it is coming from intellect from around the world. Canada, I think there's a stat that 15% of all the unicorns, billion-dollar companies, are Canadians. We hit much higher than our portion of population as being important to what happens there. Other countries like Israel and Argentina, are also France, have an incredible presence here, even though population relative to the US population would say there should be a lower ratio. So I'm going to just quickly go through some of the companies we've invested in. We're a venture firm, so we buy equity, we buy ownership in early stage companies, and we then try and have a board seat. We try and reserve money to have follow-up investments, and we try and have an influence on the company with our experiences and expertise and our network. So the first company I'm going to highlight here is Arzeta out of Washington State, University of Washington. This is a protein design company. So I'm going to be emphasizing that protein design has an impact on everything we're going to do. This company designs proteins. We invested in the company. The founder of the company won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry after we made the investment. And so that was kind of cool. So we're having our meeting with all our investors in December of 2024. We're introducing our new companies to our investors. have it done virtually through a Zoom, and the guy from our Zeta misses the cue. And we're like, what are we going to do? So we're kind of fumbling around, and he comes on the video, just like, the TV was crackling a little bit. He comes on the video and he's in a tux, and he's at the Nobel ceremony in Stockholm, Sweden. We did not know that. If you want to have a positive meeting with your investors, have a spontaneous Nobel Prize ceremony in the middle of the meeting. So that was a win, although it's still a long road to commercial success with this stuff. So the first product's just been announced, and it's a protein, design protein that goes with stevia to make stevia more like sugar than ever before. So when we saw Jacob's presentation before about all the sugar and we don't really need it, hopefully this will be one of the sweeteners that does prevail. Ethernovia is a company that came to us from being in Silicon Valley. This is a company that's creating a new communication protocol for cars, planes, and trucks. So all that wiring that manages all those sensors that give you all that trouble is now going to be wireless, and that Ethernet network is actually faster than a wired network. This is one of our bright spots right now. And they wanted us on the cap table because they see a potential in ag equipment, but this will be applied to all kinds of anything that moves. So we're excited about that company. Lithos is a company that uses basalt or enhanced rock weathering to replace lime in your farming system, but then is a permanent carbon storage vehicle. So they've signed a very large contract for carbon storage in a permanent vehicle, not sequestering from cover crops or no-till or anything like this. The carbonate in basalt is a permanent vehicle for carbon storage, so the market for that is much higher than anything that is just a casual, sequestering. This is another protein design company that's making micropeptides for pesticides. SmartWire is kind of a cool company that is a software program for ag retailers that manages the ag retailers' consumer or customer database. So all of your rebates on your Bayer and BASF, all of that sort of calculations that come back, when you get your check the next year in the wintertime, this is all being managed through this software in the United States. They're about to launch, hopefully in the Western Canada fairly soon, but this is one of our bright spots as well. Sound Ag creates a synthetic plant hormone that improves fertilizer efficiency, or hopefully. We've had long commercial success for 5 years. We have not been able to get it even tested in Canada. Now, sorry to point you out, Larry, but this is the meeting that we had with that company to try and fast track the registration process in Canada, or improve the registration process in Canada, and it's a nightmare. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Swift is the company that's working on trying to get your GPS to work during a solar wind storm. UCO, this is a company I talked to you about 3 years ago that was taking the sensitivities in people that have gluten sensitivities, celiac disease, gluten allergies. They were able to take it out of wheat so that you would still have gluten and all the benefits of gluten, but you would have no ramifications if you have a sensitivity to gluten. We're excited about that, but just imagine you guys in the seed business, the wheat producers, how incredibly complicated and difficult that is to grow a field of wheat, keep it segregated, keep it baked, keep it segregated. Like, it's just too big of a thing. It would require a company like Nestle's to take over or something. So we've had to abandon that, and they're now focused on a complete refocus with using RNA to retrain your immune system for peanut allergies. And there's a second story to this, is of course there would be testing in the US, but now there's not testing in the US because there's RNA in the title of this company. Nobody's going to go to the US with anything that's going to be vulnerable to the health minister's whims, health secretary's whims. So they have human trials starting in Australia very soon. They should be coming to Canada, but the Canadian system, even in medical tech and Health Canada, is not, well, it's an embarrassment. So, but we're quite excited about what they're able to achieve with the peanut allergy in trials leading up to the human trials. The last one I'll mention is ANZA. This is our last investment. This is out of Berkeley. They make DNA for other companies. So it's like your bakery that supplies pies to all the restaurants in the area. All this technology that's, at the cellular level, in order to make the DNA to work with, takes a lot of effort. So they're now the DNA suppliers to the world. And it's just a fun company to be a part of. We're invested in 20 other companies, but these are the ones that I thought were most applicable for you. So I'm going to highlight a few of the ones that I think are most relevant. So you'll see this is a company out of Calgary. I sit on the board of this company. They create pathway optimization software, loaded in your tractor, tells you where to go. There's a few other fun features, but we have a new feature where you can choose the pathway in relation to erosion mitigation. You can optimize your pathway for your field in relation to time or erosion. Sorry, that went too fast. And then this feature now is it takes over autonomy of the steering of the implement for your entire field. It's just software, but it does all the turns for you as well. And it works on any type of GPS system. So it's augmented autonomy. I'm quite excited about it. Let's see if the video works. So this is the first action, Treelane Farms, October. We loaded in a Topcon and a Trimble, and it's steering the tractor automatically at the headlands and around any obstacle that's loaded into it. So there's no hardware here, it's just a software. You give them the field, they put the package together, you load it, and with many of the new implements being, Starlink or whatever we would load automatically, I just loaded it through a fob, and I think in a second here you'll see it does the perfect turn without me touching the steering wheel. So we're quite excited about that. All autonomy does not work without pathway planning. People have been talking about autonomy for years. You can't just throw something in a field and expect it to do the whole field. It has to have some sort of pathway planning with it. The other thing that Verge is doing is they're mapping unexploded bombs and situations in, I don't know what to call, ordinances in Ukraine, so that they identify the field, they identify the bombs, then they create a new field map for the farmer. This is all this tech that happens in warfare and tech that happens in the dealing of the ramifications of warfare. This is not a lucrative part of the business. This is a kind of a outreach part of the business, but it's kind of amazing what they can do. So this is a company that I met at a farm show and kind of liked the guy, and his dad was a famous race car driver in Australia, and he's kind of a gearhead. I don't know if the video is going to play. This is where I do it in interpretive dance, right? Melissa, doesn't work? So this company is simply using a regular security camera, not a 3D camera, and have created an autonomy kit for farm equipment just with a camera. No LiDAR, no anything other than one camera on the front, one camera on the back. And they're doing exceptionally well in orchards and situations where GPS doesn't work or it's dusty. And they're looking at bringing this out to broadacre agriculture because the ability to manage the data coming from their vision system with the NVIDIA chips allows you to do auto steering and autonomy in an open field of wheat. They can tell the different little, stubble components to create an autonomous map. And this, once again, is mostly software, really inexpensive. This is a company we invested in, young guy out of Whitby, Ontario, became very wealthy as being the person in charge of restaurants at Yelp. I don't think he was even 30 before he owned his own vineyard in California and realized you can't manage any of the irrigation systems other than manually or drip tape. So he now manages his irrigation system with his cell phone, and they've moved it up to even 4-inch valves. So anything to do with fluid transfer, these limo valves will handle it off your cell phone. And we're just a lot of fun to be involved with this guy. Our most, let's say, impactful company right now, the one that's taken us the most effort, is Greenlight Bio. I've talked about this company in the past. They're using double-strand RNA to create a whole suite of pesticides, and they've come a long way. So the bee is there because a few months ago they registered a product called Naroa that kills varroa mite in beehives, which is a problem anywhere there's bees. This stuff is a powder. It works exceptionally well. It's an RNA powder, so it has no impact on any other living thing and kills the mite. This is the most popular product right now. Calantha is an RNA-based product that kills Colorado potato beetle. It kills it extremely well and has no impact on any other thing, like butterflies or honeybees or whatever. And one of the scientists, I told this story 3 years ago, but one of the scientists that worked on this, his job was to spin the beetles in a centrifuge till they vomited, and then he looked at the vomit to see what the nature of the vomit was, and that was his job, so that they create the protein carrier so that it would be absorbed in the gut. What that RNA does is simply keeps the animal from digesting, or the beetle from digesting. So the secret about all this RNA stuff and this this protein design is DNA is the blueprint of every living thing. And RNA is kind of like the chemical that takes the messages from the DNA and makes your hair black or your eyes blue. It's the messenger. So if you can interrupt that message, you can stop certain activities with any living organism. But because it's coded to that genetic makeup of that species or organism, it doesn't have any impact on any other living thing. So this product, it's like if we made all our weapons out of ice. When we're done, they melted to water. So this is entirely a protein, and when it degrades, it's only nitrogen. There's no cobalt, nickel, or anything. It's just nitrogen designed and created in a protein that then, so this, obviously drew a lot of our attention early on. And then they've recently announced that they have a herbicide that will kill fleabane. Now this is my photo taken in a field in North Dakota a couple of years ago of fleabane. This was the first weed to ever become resistant to glyphosate in North America. And this is the picture that went out with the global press release of this announcement of a herbicide that can be used from an RNA platform. This is pretty exciting, that you can kill a plant very precisely with RNA. And then this picture I took 2 weeks ago. This is a farm we own in Central California, and we lease it to Greenlight as their research facility. This is my colleague. That's their fusarium head blight trials in wheat. They have an RNA pathway for fusarium control in wheat. This is the current state of their profile. I've mentioned the potato beetle, the mite. They can kill spider mites now and broad spectrum mites. They can kill powdery mildew. They're working on fusarium. They're working on late blight, apple scab. There's the horseweed fleabane one. They have a wild oat unit, and they're working on canola flea beetle. So these are the companies. Farm Credit has invested with us in this company. Funding is also coming from Ontario and Canola Council, and then the University of Manitoba. Beekeepers are working with us on this company. It's kind of a coincidence that I'm from Manitoba as well. I want to really claim that I made all these connections. I just support them. I didn't make the connections. But this company went public under a SPAC and had $1 billion valuation. We were pretty excited because we were the main investor. And before the 6-month period of holding the shares, it had a zero value. It went completely to zero. We took the company private. Those of you in the investment world will find that's quite unique, that once a company fails, we took the company private again. So this is really our baby. So now it's financed privately by people we included in the refinancing. And all of those other discoveries had not been achieved at that point. So we're very lucky that they've continued to build on what we thought they were going to do when we made the investment. But obviously, this could have profound impact on how we protect crops and deal with pests. So this picture is from an event I attended last month in San Francisco, and it's a workshop for female entrepreneurs from Canada. And the woman who runs this is from a farm in High Level, Alberta, And she does this amazing job of creating an ecosystem for women interested in, access to Silicon Valley. And it's Disruption, Silicon Valley, she writes a magazine. So when I'm available, I go up and be part of her events, kind of as a mentor, being from Western Canada as well. So this woman is from Toronto, holding a panty that when you wear it, it tells you exactly when to make a baby. And it has a little fob in it right there, connects to your phone. It does a lot of other biometric stuff, but it's kindly sold like that on the baby maker. And the woman there is from McGill University. She's created a software that changes the ultrasound that you use to monitor a baby. And she changes the software so it can manage, can read the carotid artery for stroke prevention and diagnosis. These women have both bypassed the Canadian regulatory situation. They go straight to the US because they know that the Canadian Health Canada process is going to be too difficult or too ambiguous. Yet both of these technologies are really not drugs or anything. They're just things. And it's one of these things that I'm really passionate about, and I'm actually heading to Ottawa in 3 weeks with a few people that you may know to talk about this with our dignitaries and our officials, that Canada is sitting in this amazing situation of having great support for technology. You look at the previous slide of what's supporting a green light. You have amazing, let's say, farm ecosystem that buys this technology and intelligent consumers, but we have a regulatory system that is broken and has a terrible reputation outside of Canada. Just a side here a little bit. The woman who was with me and mentoring these entrepreneurs, I didn't know her, I'd never met her before, and we kind of hung out for the afternoon. I was kind of goofing around. I was asking her if she thought the panties would work on a cow or sheep or something like that. And then at the end of the day, in the evening, she was the guest speaker. I didn't know that she was the dignitary. She was the head of health sensing at General Electric, then moved to be the head of the team that created the Apple Watch, and now she's head of autonomy at NVIDIA. So she was the head of the most important departments of the biggest companies in the world at that time for the last 30 years. And she's from a farm in southern Ontario, went to the University of Waterloo, no postgraduate, that was it. And she's been at the head of these incredible divisions of these incredible companies. We walk out to the parking lot, I see an old BMW with a Toronto Maple Leafs license holder. I say, I bet you know who that car is. And she says, yeah, that's my car. So it's just really cool to run into these people that have been so impactful and come from, these environments that we come from. And I'm definitely going to keep in touch with her. So 3 years ago, I talked about this company. This was one of my favorites at the time. They were creating vaccines in corn through a true genetic modification. And they had the target of killing PED in swine, which is a terrible disease in Manitoba. And we were excited. The far chart shows how effective this corn vaccine was on PED. They had a pathway for any stable disease like rabies to create the vaccine in corn. They also could create an Ozempic response in corn so that you could get your Ozempic by eating cornflakes. We had to shut this company down. There's no money to get something this complicated to a commercial success right now. All the money has gone to AI. There's no money for med tech, certainly biotech. We talk about AI as being this big hole. More money is going to defense spending than AI. And that actually is the biggest draw on available venture money. And Jacob made a mention about that, of course, before lunch. So this company, the technology sits out there. At some point it'll come back, but it's not going to happen now. So in Manitoba, we have Emily, which is a discovery farm on the Rutherford Farms near Grosse Isle. So a lot of this tech is going to get tested there, certainly anything to do like with drones and precision ag. And I asked them what they thought some of the big ones were coming out of Manitoba right now. Ag 3 Crop Century, which monitors crop kind of autonomously. Almers is making a seed destruction machine for your combine. Sorry, Redicop's doing that. Almers has that big mother bin. TerraWave has a way to manage grain through microwaves. And then I'm going to introduce Dr. Kinneret Schaefer. Please stand up. So she is the CEO and founder of GeneNear. She arrived in Manitoba on Monday. She is moving her plant genetic business from Israel to Winnipeg. It's focused on potatoes to begin with. She has her team with her. She contacted, you weren't too comfortable about the cold weather and the roads, but it's a great story that we have technology moving to Manitoba. This is a new type of RNA and CRISPR in plant trait creation. And I'll add that Manitoba First Fund, I think, is helping with this. So I wanted to give credit to that. And I think that's a great example of what can happen in Manitoba. It's a good story. So I'm going to highlight a few other Manitoba innovations that are friends of mine. Please make her feel warm and welcome here because of the cold weather she was got. We were aware of her company in San Francisco. I met her in Banff, and it's just a coincidence that she's in. I'm going to take full credit that you're here, but it's more of a coincidence. Avery, she just sent me a note. She was unfortunate, couldn't make it. She's with Outrun Autonomy, and this, you might remember 10 years ago or so, Matt Reimer, the brilliant young man from Killarney, had created his own autonomous grain cart. This was their, I'm not sure the direct connection to Matt, but they created the same sort of thing. And they were purchased by AGCO, like Fent, Massey, a few years ago. And now in 2024, they combined with Precision Plant, and they've created a kind of a generic autonomy system that can go on any tractor. So even though it's an AGCO Fent company, the first tractor they've created, this generic autonomy kit, is for John Deere. And when we look at autonomy in Western Canada, I don't think we're ever going to get comfortable with an autonomous seeder or combine, because it means that everything has to work perfectly. Like, we can't have a tire go flat, we can't have a hose burst. We're just never going to get that comfortable with that. But we're going to maybe get comfortable with harrowing or land rolling or grain carts, that sort of thing. And when these things get down to price points that are really inexpensive, you're going to have leaving your tractor, going back to get the water truck or the seed truck and letting it go for an hour or two and then coming back. That's where I see this being directly applied to us. Katie Friesen is a brilliant young person from Niverville. Now, is Katie's dad in the audience? Okay, Katie is from a hog operation, a grain operation in Niverville. She's also worked in venture capital as well, so I've met her that way. She's created a company called Farmer Titan, and it's ingenious. You do the QR code, you put it on all your implements, you get in the implement, scan your phone, all the maintenance data, anything to do with that tractor, that combine comes up on your phone. This is the different people that are using it and why they use it. You can do, speak notes that go to the QR code for the combine, and do speech to text with that implement. And then when you sell the implement, somebody can just hold their phone up to the QR code and know the exact maintenance history of that piece of equipment on your phone. So it's called Farmer Titan. Ellery Burton. I'm going to get Ellery to, why don't you stand up and give a little bit of a wave. So Ellery's this brilliant young man who's, I think you're going to finish your PhD this year, right? And Ellery has a few projects on the go, and he's brilliant mainly because his father lives in Deloraine. That's where I'm from, just for those guys. So Ellery's company is called Altera, and one of their products is called the Grain Tracker, and please talk to him after the show about how this works. But once again, it's an elegant, simple solution to a problem, certainly for larger farms. So he has an simple RFD tags, the same as you put in cattle or livestock, and you have it on the combine, the grain cart, the truck, the auger, the bin, and so your grain is being tracked and recorded right to the storage from the field automatically. And you'll probably have tags to what the weight on the grain cart is and that sort of thing, right? And what's coming off the monitor as far as quality goes into that. So you have constant stream of connection to what you're harvesting and where it's going. And then it ends up on this dashboard because of the connection with the RFID tags on the auger, you know where each field's grain is stored and the status of the grain in that bin. And it's simply using RFID tags in a way that makes sense. Now, you have tag systems for livestock that you're working on, but we're not talking about that. And the other thing you mentioned or created is this GT flow that does, the volumetric flow measurement of any grain going into a bin or a truck. So you can do really accurate loading. I don't know if the video is going to work. There it is. And it's probably suitable for any auger or conveyor. So that's Ellery Burton. And then Marcel Kringay. Marcel, where are you? Stand there. A lot of you know Marcel. Oh, you're clapping. You're getting clapping already. That's great. I don't know when it was. Was it 8 or 9 years ago? We spent an hour or two in a truck on Victoria Avenue when you're starting your company. And, I'm going to say, unfortunately, it wasn't the right business for us at the time. I'm going to say, fortunately for us. But I'm so pleased to see how his company has become a global company. So this is one thing for Brandon definitely to be proud of. And this is Bushel Plus. Now, Marcel created the company about 10 years ago. He acquired Mad Concaves. They have a big display over as the entrance to the Manitoba room. Now they work in 3 countries with 33 employees, works with all the major companies. And then if you were seeing on social media, they had a big announcement at Agritechnica where they have a direct agreement with John Deere. So that's kind of interesting. But on Friday, they rebranded the company to Brand Vault. So that's a combination of Brandon and Vault. You can talk to Marcel about that or over at their booth. This photo shows what an amazing company Bushel Plus is. This is Blair Guthals, a great farmer from Deloraine, a friend of mine. And the fact that he is holding a Case IH colored piece of equipment and not a John Deere green piece of equipment is a testament to what his faith is in Bushel Plus. So I thought that was a good endorsement for your company, Marcel. These companies are also Canadian Farm Health Guardian. They're prominent in Manitoba. They do facial recognition and phone geo-referencing for any person that leaves or arrives at a hog operation. InCentury uses simple security cameras to measure the volume of feed bins. They have a little wiper on their camera. They're a $50 million company now. And it's just a magnet bin, a magnet camera on the lid of your bin. It works for seed companies as well, but it does a very accurate monitoring of any volume of any bin. This company out of Israel called FarmC, it's the one hog operation in Israel, they told me. This monitors pigs based on facial recognition and body recognition. So the cool thing about this company is they can tell every pig what exact weight is, and they put a paint gun above the watering nozzle, and they can shoot a red dye or blue dye, whatever, and you go to the pen in the morning and you'll know all the pigs that are ready for market by the red dye on their forehead. Or you'll know the animals that have some illness by the blue dye on their forehead. That's what AI is going to do for agriculture, is the ability to process images really fast and create these outcomes. Blocks AI is a chicken AI monitoring system. There's 3 companies I've looked at. One only looks at the chicken's comb, the other looks at the chicken, and the other one looks at the feces of the chicken. And that's how they monitor a chicken barn, through AI vision, and tells you when to, I don't know, change the feed or whatever. Cargan is a company that uses vision AI to sort day-old chicks into male and female. They're doing well. Yield AX is an AI system that sniffs barns for viruses and disease, and is a very, I'd say very efficient way of identifying disease in a barn. This is a company out of Ottawa, Guelph, and it's a bolus that goes in a cow and becomes the ID and biometric system for a cow. And it works within about a 15-meter radius, so you know everything that's going on with the cow and the ID of the cow. It's instead of the collars in a dairy barn, and much more effective. These are AI companies in the meat processing business. They have 3D cameras under the tables and above, and are helping with maximizing cut out of chicken and beef and so on. And once again, AI vision in the processing of livestock. This is a company I met probably 8 years ago. A Russian guy phoned me up, and he said that he had this way of identifying cattle through vision AI through the markings on a cow. And I said, well, how do you deal that? How does it work with brown Swiss and Jersey? And he goes, oh, I heard you were tough. He'd never had a venture guy ask that question before. So we became kind of friends, and last year in Dallas, I ran into him again. I said, how's it going? And he says, well, we've pivoted to only monitoring the staff in the dairy barn. It's very Orwellian, but I said, how's that going? And he says, I'm a Russian using Chinese cameras monitoring Latino workers in a US dairy. Business is great. I think it's kind of, well, this is what AI is going to be used for. So his business model is monitoring people while they're milking the cows. And he has done very well in those large dairies in the US. This is the smart tag side of things that we've looked at fairly intensively, but this is a tag that's out of Fargo. It'll be launched in Western Canada in March. It's satellite and cell phone, so you can put it on any animal in the world. They have them on wild camels in Saudi Arabia. The beauty about this tag being satellite is it can pick up an animal anywhere, but it's so accurate it can tell you if your bull is mounting or not. So you put on your bull, you know if your bull's mounting from the tag. You know what the temperature of the cow, you know where the cow is. It's incredible what you're monitoring. Now you're going to say, well, what does it cost? These are technologies that will become much less expensive as the market share becomes greater. And this is the cows coming home. These are the collars that are virtual fencing collars for cattle. I talked to her, there's no fence out of Norway, Halter out of New Zealand, Gallagher out of New Zealand, and then Vence out of the United States. I talked to a researcher in South Dakota last week. He's been running the Gallagher no fence on his farm, no perimeter fencing, works fantastic even in winter. And the amazing thing is for corn grazing, you don't need to put any of those fences up for corn grazing. It works within the corn. It's only lost 2 cows over the 2 years that have walked back to the farm they came from 5 miles away. So even in the winter, this is working quite well. So the last few slides here I'm going to talk about is to do with ag tech and electric vehicles. And this slide establishes my street cred in the automotive world. This is a 72 Ford Pinto that I fixed up with a friend in high school. This is the car that exploded on impact. It showed the lack of concern my parents had for making me buy the world's most dangerous vehicle. But it gave me, a lot of experience in cars. So this is the thing that's going to change everything. 3 years ago when I was here, I said AI is going to change everything because ChatGPT had been launched 2 weeks before I came to Ag Days. This was launched 2 weeks ago at the Computer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. The reason it changes everything is this is the first commercial release of a solid-state battery. This is the first commercial release of a wheel hub electric motor. What this means is there's no liquid in the battery, no fire. It works equally well at -40 Celsius as it does at 100. So any of you guys that try to get from Brandon to Winnipeg in an electric vehicle in the middle of winter, this is a much different situation we're working with. It does a 5-minute charge. So it's the same amount of time as filling up your vehicle, and you could probably get 1,000 kilometers out of most of the designs they're going to come up with. 100,000 cycles on the battery. That's 50 million miles in a car. 400 kilowatt hours per kg. That's 50% to twice the density of an existing battery. No rare earth metals and no lithium. All this talk about going to get rare earth metals somewhere, that's obsolete. No lithium. They're inexpensive. They're selling the motorcycle for $35,000. You can order it today and have it delivered in the fall, and it's no cooling. That wheel hub motor, that can generate 13,000 pounds of 1300,000 pounds torque for a motor on a semi. Imagine putting it on the caster wheel of your air seeder. That is incredible what that thing can do. So even if it's like, we have a person in Helsinki that's from Helsinki. We have a person, he sent me a note today. He met with them. He says they're legit. It's a real company. It's an eccentric billionaire that's backed them. He doesn't know if the battery's true or not. But he said everything he's checked out so far, and this was a note this morning, points to this being logical or possible. This is German companies that have made new electric motors, no rare earth metals. This rare earth metal thing is going away fairly fast as we get to advanced materials. These are the BYDs out of China that'll be coming. They have a 1,000-volt platform in China. I don't know if we'll ever have that in Western Canada in the near future. Those are 5-minute charging cars as well, and very high quality. Those BYD trucks, those are hybrids that look like a regular truck. And you'll see comments from farmers in Australia how great they are. BYD semis have been in Canada for 10 years. So in Toronto and Ontario, those have been fairly common. BYD stands for Build Your Dreams. We can advance that. You can advance it there. Last few slides. So this electrification thing, of course, impacts farm equipment, but it also, so 100 horsepower was considered a limit of electric tractor, but now if you got a battery that has twice the density, you could easily go to a 300 horsepower tractor. Work in cold weather, work for never wearing out, no DEF issues. It could, this could happen fairly quickly. This is a picture I took on Friday in San Francisco. There's 6 autonomous taxis in a row in front of me there. They transport 80,000 people a day in Waymos right now. This is how everyone's going to be moving around in the cities. They're now in Austin and so on, but the amount of these cars in San Francisco, you're never on a street in San Francisco where you don't see one. These are hydrogen cell cars. That's a picture I took of a hydrogen cell car last week. This is going to have impact on farm equipment because of the ability to have greater energy density for a larger motor. This is a company in Canada that sent me these mock-ups of hydrogen-powered trucks that maybe I'll be able to try one. Then the last few things here I'll mention are some of the mistakes. Vertical farming, worm farming, these things have fallen apart because of the fundamental design or the fundamental problems that you realize as a farmer, that we can grow lettuce in many places. You don't need to grow them in a skyscraper. And worm farming's been around for 40 years. That's not profound, yet there's been billions of dollars lost in worm farming. These are the 3 craziest things I ever reviewed. This was a biochar making system that they had raised $10 million for. That's an autonomous ATV, a flamethrower with a propane torch, and a steel hood that was to burn the wheat straw as it goes through the farm. So the idea is to burn the straw without oxygen. That was their $10 million thing. Now when I told them, I said, what about fire? And then they phoned me back and they put a water tank on that. That was insane. This is a company out of, I won't get into too many details, but in Sausalito Vineyard, this guy phones me up. He creates structured water. It's more hydrating, electronic goals. You give him the georeference, he'll send you, with his supercomputer run by AI, he'll send a frequency for your water and allows the water to be more hydrated. But what they found out, they can get rid of mice with it as well. And so all the mice went out of the hog barn from this one location, moved to the house, so you got a different location for the house, sends the frequency, he gets the mice out of the house. And he goes to me at the end of the pitch because it's just so bizarre. It was a PowerPoint that didn't work, so he held printed pages up to the camera. You knew it was going to go sideways. And he goes, okay, Scott, I see you're not interested in my technology. Would you be interested in used mining equipment? And he held up a bunch of used mining equipment he was trying to sell me. So, this is a catalytic converter for cows. A company that rhymes with Tiny Soft put a ton of money into this. You surgically put that thing in the rumen of a cow, spread the spider out like an anchor in drywall, and that actually has platinum in it. And so this is insane. It goes up to 300 degrees. It does capture the methane, but their business model was crazy as well, and they were going to implement it in Africa. This thing sits out of the cow like 10 centimeters. And so we talk about it a bit, and I said, what about when the cow lays on its left side? And they said, oh man, we've never had a venture guy ask that before. And it turns out it only works if the cow sits on its right side. If it sits on the left side, it doesn't work. And I said, what are you doing about that? He says, we are putting a lot of effort into creating technology that only makes the cow sit down on its right side. $14 million. They've now pivoted to an embryo system, embryo transplant system to improve genetics, which is really the only way to deal with methane in cattle, simply improve the productivity. The last one here came out of Hollywood last year. These guys phoned me up, 3 guys, and they'd invented a collar that read the mind of a dog. And they'd already got $1 million from a pet food company. And this one guy, he'd done his homework, but I'm not going to be the one that invests in a company that can read the mind of a dog. But the videos were very compelling. I checked the internet this morning, I don't see that they've made any great advancements. But I go to the rest of my team, I said, this is like that Far Side cartoon where Dr. Schwartzman finally figures out what a dog says, and all it is hey, 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 hey. Spending $20 million to find out that the animal really doesn't have any thoughts. None of my teammates knew what Far Side was, because I'm too old. But we're not investing in a dog mind-reading collar. I had a farmer ask if he could get it for his wife, because he can't understand what she's saying, and then he goes, and she probably needs it for me. So. Sorry, if you can advance there, and the video. So I want all this stuff about all these new technologies and what's happening in AI and all that. The thing you can do is get involved. Get involved in your producer groups, because AI can only process data that it has out there already. And where is that independent quality data going to come from? It's not going to come from the companies. It's not going to come from those giant tech companies, because they're looking to disrupt agriculture. They're not looking to supplement agriculture. So you need to get involved to support the organizations that represent your industry. These ones here, if you're in the audience, I hope one of you, I hope you're a member of at least one of these groups. And I'll leave this to go listen to the Extensionist podcast in an hour and a half. I just noticed that my listenership was the lowest. I think it's just my mom and her friends that listen to mine. But there is stories about me getting confused with Donny Osmond, me making out with Catherine Zeta-Jones while we were backpacking in Italy. Those are the stories that are on that podcast I didn't share with you. So thank you very much.